when shadows fell on the Duggar road. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. For Duggar family latest news update, please subscribe the channel and press the bell icon. The late summer sun was dipping low in the sky as Jim Bob Duggar steered their family SUV down the quiet country highway outside Fayetteville, Arkansas. The air held a gentle warmth, and in the back seat, Michelle Duggar sat beside her youngest children, trying to soothe a fretful toddler. The older Duggar children rode in the second row, chatting softly among themselves about upcoming farm chores and who would help with the garden harvest. But in a single terrifying instant, everything changed. The fateful turn. Jim Bob had just rounded a gentle curve in the road when a semi-truck, bearing no lights, emerged out of nowhere in the adjacent lane. The rumble of the engine, the screech of tires, and the sudden flash of panic filled that moment. Time slowed for Jim Bob. He yanked the wheel, trying to avoid a head-on collision. But it was too late. The SUV swerved violently, the tires grinding against asphalt, as gravel sprayed and metal screeched. The impact came with brutal force, the world tilting sideways. Michelle's hands flew to her mouth as the vehicle spun, window shattering. Screams echoed and children cried out. Then darkness swallowed everything. After the crash, when Jim Bob awoke, the world hurt. His head throbbing, vision blurred, he could hear muffled voices, alarms, a distant siren. He tried to move, but pain seared through his limbs. The SUV lay off the road, wrapped around a tree. The front was crushed, the windshield cracked like spiderwebs. A paramedic's voice broke through the haze. "Sir, can you hear me? Stay still. We're going to get you out safely." Jim Bob's eyelids fluttered. He felt something wet on his face. Blood? Rain? Tears? He couldn't tell. He tried to reach for Michelle. Desperation surged. "Michelle," he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. Footsteps near him. Then a shape. Michelle. Her face was pale, eyes closed, breathing ragged. A paramedic held her head still. He felt horror. She had been badly hurt. He tried to rise again. "Don't stay down," someone said. A voice he recognized, one of his sons, crying from the wreckage behind him. He heard the faint cry of toddlers. A daughter weeping. "Mommy, mommy," the screams, the sirens, the pain. It all converged into a nightmare. Hospital halls and fading hopes. Jim Bob's world blurred in the hospital. Beeps of monitors, fluorescent lights overhead. The smell of antiseptic. He lay on a stretcher, barely conscious, as doctors and nurses hovered around him. A nurse whispered something like skull fracture, internal bleeding, critical condition. He tried to focus, to gather strength. Through the haze, he saw Michelle on a neighboring bed. She was unconscious, her skin pale, tubes and wires trailing from her body. A surgical mask covered her mouth. A ventilator hissed softly. She looked so fragile, so far from the vibrant mother of many. Their children were in another room, safe but shaken. Some had cuts and bruises. One child had a broken arm. The older Duggar siblings paced the waiting area, tears staining cheeks. One by one, family members arrived. Jessa, Jana, Jill, Joanna, rushing in, hugging each other, trembling with anguish. The weight of the crash pressed down on them all. They clung to faith. They whispered prayers. But fear gnawed at their hearts. Doctors emerged from doors. One in scrubs approached. The head surgeon cleared his throat. "Mr. Duggar, Mrs. Duggar, I'm sorry." The silence that followed was suffocating. The battle for life. Jim Bob's injuries were grave. The skull fracture meant brain swelling, hemorrhages in his lungs, fractures in several ribs. He drifted between consciousness and anesthesia. Sometimes he'd see fleeting visions, Michelle's face, their children, memories of holidays. Pain and confusion wrestled inside him. Michelle's state was even more precarious. Her lungs were crushed in part. She'd lost a lot of blood, internal organs bruised. The doctors had performed emergency surgery. Her heart slowed at times, the ventilator struggling to keep her alive. In the ICU, she lay motionless, fighting in the dark. The Duggar children sat vigil outside the ICU doors, hands clasped, eyes red from crying. Their youngest siblings clung to their older ones, terrified. The family pastor and close friends formed a prayer circle in the hallway, their voices trembling yet resolute. Days passed like agonizing hours. Jim Bob, in and out of consciousness, drifted between memory and dream. He thought he saw Michelle smiling, calling his name, but then the faces dissolved. Nurses told him he had to pull through, not just for himself, but for her, for their children. Michelle remained in critical condition, hovering on the edge. Every beep of her monitor was like a war. Surgeons returned again and again during long nights, battling internal bleeding and stabilizing her broken body. Echoes in the family. Inside the house, a large farmhouse just up the road, things had changed dramatically. With Jim Bob and Michelle incapacitated, the older Duggar children took charge. Jana organized the younger ones, cooking, cleaning, caring, consoling. Jill held the littlest babies and rocked them. Jessa, Jana, and Joanna coordinated with neighbors for food and help. Word spread through town. The Duggars were in a terrible accident. Reporters swarmed the roadside. Drones hovered above the hospital. Family friends asked to pray. Church groups brought casseroles, water, tissues. But amid the chaos, whispers circulated. What caused the accident? Was the truck driver negligent? Could someone be prosecuted? Insurance companies, police reports, media curiosity. They all circled like vultures. The family, already under public scrutiny due to past controversies, felt the weight of both physical trauma and public gaze. Inside, though, their focus was singular. Life or death. Turning point. A miracle, a choice. On the third night after the crash, Jim Bob stirred. His eyes opened slowly, pain-laced but alive. He twisted his head with effort and saw Michelle beside him. She was unconscious, hooked to machines. He reached a trembling hand toward her. "Michelle, I'm here." His voice cracked. A nurse intervened gently, checking his pressing a call button. He was still fragile, but conscious. Moments later, Michelle, in that medical haze, responded. Her fingers twitched. A shudder, a soft moan. The monitor beeped faster. Doctors rushed in. Jim Bob's heart leapt. She was awake, barely, but alive. All along, the family had prayed. It had felt like an eternity. But now, against bleak odds, the tide started to turn. Michelle's vitals strengthened slowly over days. Brain swelling receded. Her lungs stabilized. She opened her eyes, weak, scattered, but present. She recognized Jim Bob's voice, their children's faces. Tears spilled. "Jim, oh, Jim," she whispered. Jim Bob, himself still weak, managed a soft smile. "You're back," he breathed. They held hands. For a moment time froze. Healing, recovery, redemption. Recovery was long. Broken bones mended, surgeries followed by physical therapy, nursing care, rehabilitation. Jim Bob had neurological damage, but with physiotherapy and persistence, he relearned strength. Michelle, too, fought through pain, weakness, shock, and emotional scar. Their children stayed close. The older ones took shifts at the hospital bedside, reading scriptures, singing hymns, praying out loud. They told stories, played soft games, held on to hope. Neighbors, supporters, church congregations visited, offering meals, prayers, encouragement. The media still lurked, but the family asked for privacy, for healing first and quiet moments. Jim Bob and Michelle shared whispered conversations about gratitude and grace. They talked of faith, of fragility, of purpose. Michelle would lie in bed and look at family photos, her 19 children, grandchildren, and weep quietly. Jim Bob would gently stroke her hand and promise to walk every step forward with her. As weeks passed, they returned home, but not to the same life. Hospital beds remained in spare rooms for recovery. Ramps, assistive devices, caregivers came. The children rallied. Younger ones helped with chores. Older ones opened home businesses to help with medical bills. The crash left scars, physical, mental, emotional. Nightmares haunted Jim Bob. Michelle sometimes trembled at sudden loud noises. But they clung to light, family, faith, forgiveness, reckoning with the past. The accident became more than a tragedy. It became a lens for reflection. The Duggars, once seen by some as a symbol of large family faith living boldly, now faced their vulnerability. Rumors and criticism from past controversies whispered in the background. The media attempted to dredge old scandals, but the family asked compassion. Jim Bob, in a rare public statement, thanked medical teams, first responders, neighbors, and fans. He humbly spoke of grace, of second chances, of the preciousness of life. Critics listened. Supporters wept. Michelle, slowly regaining strength, became quieter, more introspective. She journaled her pain, her gratitude, her questions of faith. She wrote letters to each child, to their future selves, about how fragile life is, how love matters most, how forgiveness is essential. Their children, too, matured quickly. Younger ones who had been sheltered began confronting uncertainty, mortality, responsibility. They faced fears, but they also found new depth in caring, in community, in leaning on one another. The road to tomorrow. A year later, in the soft glow of autumn, Jim Bob and Michelle took a slow drive. Not far, along the road where the crash had occurred. Their children rode along, older siblings in charge of navigation, safety. Their SUV was new, safer, and they drove cautiously. As they passed the tree that had been the crash's instrument, none spoke at first. Jim Bob gripped Michelle's hand. She leaned her head on his shoulder. They looked out the window at familiar fields, quiet barns, gentle hills. Jessa whispered, "We made it." Jana nodded. Jill's eyes filled. Joanna reached for a sibling's hand. They were a family reborn, scarred, humbled, thankful. Jim Bob cleared his throat. "We lost so much that day," he said softly. "But we gained perspective. We learned that life is fragile, love is strong, and faith. Faith is what carries us when everything else falls apart." Michelle raised her eyes to him, then turned to their children. She spoke softly, "My heart hurts from memory still, but your presence heals me. You all are life. You make it worth living." They drove on in silence, thankful for the journey, knowing the road ahead would still have bumps, but also promise. Epilogue. Such is the imagined tale of Jim Bob Duggar's catastrophic accident and miraculous recovery. In pain, loss, and uncertainty, this brother and mother faced the brink, but did not fall. Their children, now bearers of grief and hope, stood by them and carried them into a new dawn. Did I end this story? The accident does not define the family. Their faith, love, courage, and resilience do. Jill Duggar's wedding to her new boyfriend Ben Sewell's secrets revealed as strain builds over Duggar legacy and family expectations. When the world first met the Duggar family through 19 kids and counting, the show wasn't just about everyday life in a household with nearly 24 children. It was about faith, discipline, and a carefully constructed public image. Millions tuned in to see Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar raise their children under a strict code of modesty, obedience, and unwavering Christian values. But as with many reality TV families, what appeared on screen was only part of the story. Off-camera, cracks began to form. Some children started questioning the rules, others felt suffocated by expectations, and scandals surrounding Josh Duggar began to unravel the Duggar brand. At the center of this storm stands Jill Duggar Dillard, once a dutiful daughter, now a woman battling heartbreak, strained family ties, and the constant pressure of being a Duggar in a world that demands perfection. And when we bring in the struggles of her sister Jessa and her husband Ben, the picture grows even darker. This is the emotional, complicated, and shocking story of Jill's heartbreak with Derek, the Duggar family's divisions, and the quiet pain of Ben and Jessa. Jill and Derek. At first, Jill and Derek Dillard seemed like the perfect match. They met through missionary work, and their courtship was presented as wholesome and God-centered. Their wedding was televised, their first child was celebrated on TV, and the couple was positioned as a shining example of Duggar values. But almost immediately after the cameras stopped rolling, reality set in: financial struggles. Derek struggled to find stable work. His attempts at missionary work often left the family dependent on donations and financial support, which created criticism and even ridicule online. Isolation. Jill was torn between loyalty to her husband and the control of her parents, who had always dictated the lives of their children. Choosing Derek meant stepping away from the Duggar machine, and Jill knew it would cost her. Emotional strain. The couple faced stress from raising children without consistent income, moving frequently, and the heavy weight of public scrutiny. Derek grew increasingly vocal about the Duggar family's hypocrisy. He accused Jim Bob of hoarding profits from the show, claimed Jill was denied compensation for years of filming, and suggested darker control mechanisms behind the scenes. For Jill, this wasn't just about money. It was about identity. Could she remain the loyal Duggar daughter and still stand by her husband? Heartbreak behind closed doors. Sources close to Jill have spoken about how hard this has been on her emotionally. Imagine growing up in a home where obedience was everything, then marrying a man who constantly pushes you to stand up against that very system. It's not just a marital struggle, it's a spiritual and psychological war inside Jill's heart. She has admitted in interviews that setting boundaries with her family caused tears, arguments, and breakdowns. She has revealed needing therapy to cope with years of trauma from her upbringing and the fallout with her parents. At one point, she admitted she wasn't even allowed to visit her family's home unless Jim Bob gave explicit permission. For a woman raised to believe family was sacred, being cut off was devastating. Jill's marriage to Derek hasn't been without love, but it has been full of pain, sacrifice, and loss. Jill's memoir, Counting the Cost, was the ultimate act of rebellion against Duggar's silence. In it, she described exploitation on the show. Jill claimed she never saw a dime for years of filming, the strict contract. She revealed she was pressured to sign agreements she barely understood. The manipulation. Jim Bob allegedly used faith and fear to keep control over his children's lives and money. Derek stood by her, encouraging her to speak her truth, but this only deepened the rift with the family. For Jill, writing the book was healing. For Jim Bob and Michelle, it was betrayal. Ben and Jessa's struggles. While Jill and Derek were fighting their battles openly, Ben and Jessa Seawald were fighting quieter but equally painful wars. Jessa was once the darling of the Duggar daughters, beautiful, outspoken, and seemingly happy in her marriage to Ben. But cracks began to show. Financial stress. Like Derek, Ben never found a traditional career. The couple has relied heavily on social media income, sponsorships, and sometimes support from the family. Parenting challenges. With multiple children and a smaller home, Jessa has faced criticism for everything from messy houses to parenting choices, miscarriages, and grief. Jessa bravely shared her experiences with pregnancy loss, opening up about the pain that so many women face silently. But behind the courage was undeniable sorrow. And Ben himself? Many Duggar watchers describe him as struggling under the weight of responsibility. Married young, father of several kids, and thrust into a high-pressure environment, Ben has appeared tired, overwhelmed, and sometimes checked out. Unlike Derek, Ben hasn't openly fought Jim Bob, but his quiet compliance hasn't made life easier. The tension of trying to live up to Duggar's standards while barely keeping afloat has put a visible strain on his marriage. Jill versus Jessa. Sisters on different paths, though they were once inseparable, Jill and Jessa's relationship has been tested by their different choices. Jill stepped away, wrote a book, and confronted the family system head-on. Jessa stayed closer, defended her parents more, and tried to maintain balance. Jill Duggar's new hairdo causes backlash. Jill Duggar Dillard and her husband Derek were overjoyed when they found out they were expecting their fourth Childa baby girl. Her name would be Isla Marie Dillard, and she was already loved by her parents and her 3 older brothers. They eagerly waited for her arrival, dreaming of the day she would fill their home with her cries, her coos. But sometimes, life doesn't follow the plan. At a routine checkup, they heard the words no parent ever wants to hear: there is no heartbeat. Their beautiful baby girl had died in the womb. She was stillborn just months before her expected birth. The couple shared their heartbreak publicly. It is with heavy hearts that we announce the stillbirth of our beautiful baby girl, Isla Marie Dillard. From the moment we found out we were pregnant, we couldn't wait to meet our baby. They held a memorial service for Isla. There was a tiny white coffin, soft toys, handwritten notes, and pale pink flowers. Her name, Isla, meaning devoted to God, and Marie, meaning wished for child, reflected how deeply wanted and cherished she was. Jill and Derek's 3 sons had looked forward to meeting their baby sister. They never got the chance to. We will love you forever and hold you in our hearts until we hold you in heaven. Jill Duggar is one of the Duggars who has done the most whistleblowing out of the family. Duggar News followers understand it's not easy going after the people who raised her, but they have been appreciative of her for speaking her truth and calling out the problematic elements. Now, most of Jill's posts surround her home life, her loving husband Derek, and her beautiful kids. One of the major sources of Jill's income is her social media presence. Hence, she is constantly posting things and sharing highlights from her life for everyone's entertainment.